It was April 17, 1975, when Pol Pot, a communist revolutionary, led the communist forces of the Khmer Rouge to Phnom Penh, beginning a vicious 4-year regime in Cambodia. Approximately 2 million people died. Most died from starvation, malnutrition, and mistreatment or misdiagnosed illness. Another 200,000 were executed as enemies of the state. How could this have happened? To begin with, Cambodia had been having many issues since the end of French colonization in 1953. It was out of the struggle with the French that the Khmer Rouge was born, a communist party of Cambodia. The issues of the Civil War that had begun since 1970 were then made worse by the war that was going on right outside their borders between Vietnam and the U.S., which ended up moving into Cambodia and killing many. Many who resented the lives lost because of the American actions taken turned towards the Khmer Rouge, who had made false promises. By early 1973, about 85% of Cambodian territory was in the hands of the Khmer Rouge, and the Lol Nol army was almost unable to go on the offensive. April 17, 1975 ended 5 years of foreign interventions, bombardment, and civil war in Cambodia. On this date, Phnom Penh, a major city in Cambodia, fell to the communist forces. Thus, the Cambodian genocide begun. Just a few days after, millions of people were forced out of the cities and into the countryside to take on agricultural work and forced labor. During these evacuations, those who couldn't help or refused to go were immediately shot. They wanted to implement a communist, Maoist, Marxist society in which there were no rich, no poor, and no exploitation. To do this, they abolished money, free markets, normal schooling, private property, foreign clothing styles, religious practices, and traditional Khmer culture. Public schools, pagodas, mosques, churches, universities, shops, and government buildings were shut or turned into prisons, stables, re-education camps, and granaries. Anyone who refused to be re-educated was shot. They executed those who were educated, such as lawyers, doctors, teachers. They killed anyone who displayed Western traits, such as wearing glasses. They also killed people simply for smiling or crying, as they didn't want people to show emotion. Everyone was deprived of basic human rights. Scholars were interrogated and tortured. People who had been on the opposite side of the war were interrogated and tortured. People who gathered to talk with 3 or more people were accused of being traitors and were also interrogated and tortured. People that were minorities, people who showed emotion, people who wore glasses, people who were accused of being traitors. People were denied their most basic human rights. The most important prison in Cambodia, known as S21, held approximately 14,000 prisoners while in operation, and only about 12 survived. Many died from exploitation. Under the terms of CPK's 1976 4-year plan, Cambodians were expected to produce 3 tons of rice per hectare throughout the country. This meant that people had to grow and harvest rice all 12 months of the year. In most regions, the Khmer Rouge forced people to work more than 12 hours a day without rest or adequate food. By the end of 1977, Cambodia and Vietnam were at odds again. Tens of thousands of people were sent to fight and thousands were killed. In December 1978, Vietnamese troops fought their way into Cambodia. They captured Phnom Penh on January 7, 1979. 1979 marked the end of the genocide, but not the end of the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge continued to exist until 1999, when all of its leaders had defected to the royal government in Cambodia, had been arrested, or had died. The scars they left on the country will never fade. While the genocide is over, the wounds left on Cambodia are apparent. Many died from diseases, lack of medical treatment, starvation, executions, and exhaustion. 25% of the population was lost. Those who did survive are widows, orphans, and severely traumatized citizens. Many mental health issues and disabilities have been registered since 1980. These reasons and the destruction of schools and hospitals are why Cambodia is still plagued by poverty. This genocide might be over, but there are still remaining scars. This genocide might be over, but there are many more genocides happening at this very moment. Basic human rights that we so often take for granted are being denied from people. Join an organization against genocide, donate money, or simply raise awareness. As Elie Wiesel, survivor of the Holocaust, once said, one person of integrity can make a difference of life and death. As long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be free. As long as one child is hungry, our lives will be filled with rage. What all these victims need above all is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them ours, that while their freedom depends on ours, the quality of our freedom depends on theirs. Wisely. So please, help fight genocide.
And